There we go.
You're muted, Robin.
Well, it looks like we're live. Over to you, Robin. Are you going to kick us off here? Oh, her head just disappeared.
Just going to give everyone a minute or two to get logged in, and then we will begin the webinar.
Wonderful. As you're joining, say hi in the chat. Hello, we're getting highs in the chat. It's one of the wonderful things about our sector when you see names you recognize. Joining the ability to connect across our country virtually is like kind of awesome. We're just going to wait a minute or two, Robin, and then get started once people get virtually sat down.
Yes, just another minute. We're at just about 300 people, so I just wanted to give everyone time to get logged in this morning.
Wonderful. Lots of hellos.
We also have people joining from YouTube, Nova Scotia already, so that's great.
This is wonderful. Heather says it's Employee Appreciation Day today, too. We have to share a day with, can't even get our own day.
Well, International Women's Day is actually Sunday, but
oh, is it?
I want to
Okay.
ask all these lovely women to work on a Sunday.
Let's make it Mother's Day. And for those that happen to be mothers as well. Is there a way to see who's joined the webinar? I don't think attendees can see each other, was a question there. Just looking at that. Good. Shall we get going?
Great.
Oh, what it appears that people can't see other people's chats on our settings. So after you've done the introduction, Robin, maybe take a look at that. It looks like people can't see other people's chat. After we've gotten started here, maybe take a peek at that.
Okay, so I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. We're really glad that you're here. This event brings together leaders from across Canada to share personal stories, strategies, and practical insights on overcoming barriers and building inclusion in local government. Today, our panelists will explore the theme Give to Gain, which highlights how mentorship, knowledge sharing, and reciprocity help drive progress for women in local government and the communities they serve. Before we begin, I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of many First Nations, Inuits, and Métis people. We encourage all to learn about, sorry, it's jumping back and forth. We encourage everyone to take a moment to learn about the current and historic relationships that exist between the unceded land on which we live and work and the First Nations and Inuit and Métis people. We also encourage everyone to consider how they can personally contribute to the reconciliation journey with Canada and Indigenous people. I also want to take a moment to recognize the women whose names you see here representing organizations across Canada. These are the women doing the work year-round, sharing information, building connections, coordinating, learning opportunities, and consistently showing up to support women in local government. From Alberta municipalities, that includes Robin Becker, Karina Jung, Lorraine Petrowski, and Melanie Sampson. We're also grateful for the leadership and collaboration of Jennifer Gooding from CAMA, Renee Johansson from Civic Info BC, Jay Perrant from LGA, Linda Davies from SLGM, and Tracy Lawrenson from Civic Excellence. Together, this group plays a critical role in strengthening networks and creating space for women to learn, lead, and support one another across the country. I'll now turn it over to Melanie Sampson to talk more about the organization and the work behind this collaboration.
Thank you, Robin. I'll keep it pretty brief, but first off, just wanted to say good morning and thank you and welcome to everyone that's here today. I'm grateful that you chose to spend part of your day with us today. I'm going to start by talking about how important I think it is right now, more than maybe ever, to have this space, a space where women can come together to both celebrate and commiserate what it means to be female leaders. Leadership, as always, can be incredibly rewarding, but also, as we know, sometimes incredibly heavy. So having this room, even if it's a virtual one, full of women from across Canada who understand that matters. When we first launched Wilga in 2021, we truly didn't know where it would go. But what we did know was that there was a need for this place for women to connect, to network, and to grow alongside one another. In 2023, we hosted our first Cross Canada webinar, and we had approximately 50 registrants. Today, we've had over 600 people register the intent to participate today. And as you can see in the chat, we have, I guess you can't see it, we have over 300 or 400 people who have joined, plus people joining us in for YouTube. So the growth has been instrumental. What that tells me is something extremely important. It tells me that this matters to you as much as it matters to us. The opportunity to hear from other women leaders and to share your own experiences and to support each other matters. It also tells me that you are propping up other women by telling them about this event that we've had in the past and again today. You've shared it with your friends, your peers, and your colleagues, and the registration numbers are showing that. How beautiful that aligns with this year's theme, Give to Gain, is just one of those things that serendipitously have lined up pretty nicely. So with that, I want to challenge each and every one of you on this call today to think about the women in your life, whether it's your peers, your friends, your staff, how you can help them grow and support them the way that you have supported us as Wilga. I often can be heard saying, be the kind of woman who fixes another woman's crown. There's more than enough space for all of us, and so we don't need to compete. We rise higher when we help each other grow, just as you've been the catalyst as the growth for Wilga. I hope that you continue to be the catalyst of growth for other women in your world. I'm honored to be here with all of you today and with this incredible group of panelists that we have to hear and learn from. Happy International Women's Day, which of course is on Sunday, to each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. I'll turn it back to Robin.
Thanks, Mel. Finally, I would like to take a moment to recognize the great women who have joined us today and agreed to share their time, experience, and perspectives. We're honored to be joined by Jody Murray, Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Labrador City, Newfoundland and Labrador, Denise Corey, Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Huntsville, Ontario, Anna Mathewson, Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Port Moody, British Columbia, Michelle Charles Gustafson, Confidence and Success Coach and Image Consultant. Each of these women brings a unique perspective on leadership, service, and what it means to give and gain in local government and beyond. We're so grateful for their willingness to contribute to the conversation and to share their insights with all of us today. Guiding our discussion is our facilitator, Tracy Lawrenson, who will be leading us through the conversation and helping these perspectives together. With that, I'll turn it over to Tracy and get us started.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Robin. And thank you for all your stick handling of the logistics here. So it's not for the faint of heart to have 700 folks relying on Robin. So thank you. I just want to say what a great honor it is to be a part of this. It's certainly, if not the one of the highlights of my career, being able to be a part of this work that we're doing here. A number of you also, we had an overwhelming response to a survey that Wilga posted online and at different conferences around what is the experience of women in local government leadership. And there's a lot of data there, and I know that Wilga will be using it. We used it to build the agenda for this webinar, but also for some of the work being done through the year. But what we found is that women were really confident in their roles, confident in their experience and their commitment. Where their challenges came in was really around, and on the next slide here, Robin, if you don't mind, just really around the structures. It's not confidence, it's really the structural support around how to handle, harassment, the access or uneven access to mentorship, sponsorship, a desire for more sort of formality, including for things like Wilga, the opportunity for strong leaders to connect, but also realizing that there's a lot of pressure, and things land differently amongst individuals across the local government spectrum. And, when we just candidly, as we are sort of crafting this, this is not going to deal with the challenges of intersectionality and the experience that individuals identifying as women in the workplace see. We're really talking on International Women's Day or around International Women's Day about, again, those that do identify as women. So we understand how diverse that group still is. And it's one of the things I'm really excited about our panel because we have individuals that have different trajectories into their leadership chairs as leaders. And so what I'm going to do is actually just pass it over to each of our panelists just to tell the group a bit about what they have experienced, and how they got to where they are. And Jody, do you mind if I toss it over to you first to
Not at
start us
all.
off here? And we can get rid of the slides now. Thank you, Robin.
Thank
Over to you,
you.
Jody.
Thanks so much, Tracy. It's truly an honor to be a part of this panel, this conversation. I'm currently, as Robin said, the CAO in Labrador City in Newfoundland and Labrador. And over the past 20 years, I guess I've served in various leadership positions across provincial government, economic development, municipal administration. Early in my career, I was also the mayor, so I get a unique perspective on both council staff relations. But much of my career was really traditionally in male-dominated spaces. And, from manufacturing to aerospace and defense to now municipal leadership. And I definitely felt the pressure to do more, to work harder, to prove I needed to belong at that table. That experience built resilience, and I know that's part of our conversation today. But it also helped shape my perspective because I actually no longer believe that resilience should be a entry requirement for women to feel that they belong around the table now. And I guess I can go back to just an example quickly, Tracy, if I could. I was asked to present at an International Women's Day more than 20 years ago now. And I remember coming back from a week-long investment prospecting trip in Boston and picking up my 3 kids and the male principal of the school saying, do you feel guilty for being away for a week? And taken aback, I quickly said, if I was a man, would you ask me if I felt guilty? And I felt really discouraged at that time. And I can honestly say today, I'm much more encouraged by the women that surround me, the women that support me, the women coming behind me, because I agree, women leaders don't lack confidence or capability. They lack the structural supports that help make leadership sustainable. So happy to be here, contribute to that conversation because I'm passionate about making sure that the next generation of women don't feel like they have to prove themselves to overperform just to belong. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Jody. Denise, can I turn it over to you?
Sure, thank you very much, and so honored to be part of this panel. Very humbled at the same time. What an amazing group of women, so I'm just so happy to be here today. So my journey is a little bit different. It's been an amazing journey in municipal government. I started with the town in 1992, which makes me here for 34 years now. So when I first came on board, I was in a fairly junior position. And over the years, I've just had so much support with the municipality, encouraging me, supporting educational growth, and doing a lot of hard work. And along with that came some opportunities, which has me in the position that I am today. So I am the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Huntsville. I've been in this role for 12 years this month, and I'm the first female CAO the town of Huntsville has had, and I'm the longest serving CAO the town has had. So very excited and proud of that accomplishment. So it was not easy. So for someone that was born and raised in this community, it was not only perhaps the structural challenges that exist for women in the workplace, but it was to some degree the community as well as some of my colleagues. So, I was born and raised here and came up through the ranks. And when the mayor of the day in 2014 had said to me, "I'd really want you to be the CAO for the town of Huntsville," and I remember saying to him, "Absolutely not. I do not want the job. I've sat as the municipal clerk prior to this, and I've just seen lots of things happen and just certainly not interested." So went home that night, and my partner at the time said to me, "You have two opportunities. You have either somebody comes in and runs the organization the way that they want it to be run, or you bring that community connection with you." And it got me thinking that, yeah, I absolutely can do this job. So came in the next day and said that I was very interested in assuming the role. And it has been nothing but amazing since that point in time. When I was appointed, though, I did have some feedback in the community that, not qualified for the job. She was born and raised here in the community. How can she possibly run this organization? And those were the initial comments that came in, but I can tell you over the years, I've had nothing but support from the community and tons of support within the municipality from council and my colleagues for sure. So it's been an amazing journey, a little bit different than perhaps what some would have done, but it's been an awesome 34 years in this role.
Thanks, Denise. I appreciate that. And I think that unique challenge of evolving through an organization is different. It's got its strengths, but it's also, everybody knows all the stuff you used to do in your very first job.
So true. So very true.
Anna, over to you, please.
Sure. Thanks so much for inviting me. Like the others have said, it's just a thrill to be here. We've had some fun prep calls, and yeah, just happy to be here participating and seeing all the others that have joined us to listen in. So I have, not surprisingly, a slightly different path as well. Unlike Denise, I've moved around within public service. I come from a sustainability and climate background, and eventually over the years gained my planning certification. But I actually started out in public service, but working for the federal government. And I think I've worked for every level of government. So I've worked for the federal government, the provincial government, or regional government, and local governments. And local governments for about 20 years now within the Greater Vancouver kind of Fraser Valley area. I've had the good fortune of working for 3 local governments, City of Surrey, City of Abbotsford, and now City of Port Moody. So a big range for those that don't know the region. That's a big range of size of community and kind of nature of the community. And but like I said, from a planning and sustainability and climate background, and as I moved through those organizations, I kind of have ended up in smaller municipalities over time, but in larger roles. So kind of from that climate sustainability background, moving to roles around environmental services, including solid waste and elements related to wastewater treatment. And then when I came here to Port Moody, I came 4 years ago as the general manager of community services. So I was kind of in increasingly senior roles, but also broadening out those roles as I moved over time. And when I came here working in community services, it was broadening out to facilities and cultural services and parks and environment. And then 2 years in, the city manager here at the time retired, and there was an opening that I put my name in for. And I know we're going to talk a little more about that and kind of taking those opportunities on. But that's a little bit about my background. So happy to be here.
Thank you. And then I'm going to go to Michelle. Just a reminder, I think we fixed the chat, but you have to click the drop down to select everyone so that people can see your chats, particularly because we started with it being only hosts and panelists. I'm going to go to Michelle, who's not only a author and a image consultant. She's also an elected official in Lloydminster. So she brings another lens to this whole work. Over to you, Michelle. Oh, you're muted.
Welcome to our lives.
There you
Thank you. Say it again. I am so excited to be here. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you all for joining. I love seeing a good chat rolling. That is awesome. My name is Michelle Charles Gustafson, and I am honored to be here. As Tracy alluded to, I am an elected official, and I will share with you that I never had being an elected official on my bingo card of life. And much like the women all sitting here, you can hear in their stories that a lot of the opportunities that they walked into, they didn't have on their bingo cards either. But what is so awesome about me being able to be here is that I have made and carved a path to help women see their greatness that sometimes they forget. And a lot of times, in my background, I'm actually a marketing consultant, but I turned image consultant where I market people. Fine. But what does that even mean? It means that as women, I know that we go through so many transitions in our lives. Studies show we go through 4 to 7 every decade. And if you're counting up transitions, you might have more than that. But at each one of those inflection points, it asks us to reconcile with ourselves who we are at that moment. And I have been so blessed to be able to take all of the pieces of my background in personal development. I was a top sales director in a direct selling company. I was a customer service manager, figuring out how to help people keep their people, how to stand out, how to be visible, and then turn all of that into the very unique experience of living life as a woman. And when I entered public life, not on my bingo card, I came face to face with a lot of the things that I've experienced in my life as being an only in the room. I preside at Lloydminster, Alberta, and Saskatchewan since I was in grade 4, but in many of the rooms, I was either the only person of color, the only woman, or the double whammy both. And even now, as I sit on council as the only woman and the first and only woman of color. And those experiences of being the only are unique and very relevant to all of us as women because they cause us to dive into ourselves, to understand ourselves more deeply if we're going to make impact. And all of these women have already shared with you in their backgrounds places where they have made inflections that would have asked them to ask themselves deeper questions. And I'm excited to bring that inner part to the leadership conversation because I know all of you women on this call are capable. You're excellent. You do the job. You get the stuff done. My job is to help you love who you're doing that when you're doing that and not to be apologizing for feeling guilty, not feeling guilty, this and that, but to really own the softness of being a woman as you do this leadership journey.
Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate that. We're going to dive into, I'm going to go through my background. I'm a lawyer by training, did labor and employment work for local government clients, and for the last 25 years have done governance, strategic planning work with elected councils. And just recently, I'm the integrity commissioner for the city of Vancouver and the Vancouver Park Board. So that's who I am. But what we've got here is a lot of wisdom in the room virtually, beyond the 4 wise women that are on our panel. And so I do encourage you, now that we got the chat all humming, both on YouTube and in the webinar, please give your advice on resources and suggestions. We will aggregate those. The recording will be shared, but we'll also aggregate the chat up. And if by chance we don't get to a question you have, we'll follow up after the fact because we've got over 700 people participating in this. So again, just if you've got tips or resources, the structure for today is we're going to talk a little bit about resilience. We touched on in the introductions. We're going to talk about mentorship, about how to build those connections, to enable that sort of support system, but also candidly, how do we help each other move through our careers? How are we, as women in this sector, helping other women? We're going to talk quite directly as well, even about the premise of the give to gain, like how much more giving do women in the workplace have to keep doing, so just we're gonna, hopefully, from our panelists hear a little bit about their experience. So at the end, we will ask for and share resources, including Michelle's book. We'll drop a link in at the back for those of you that are interested. But just in terms of resilience, one of the things that we discussed when we were preparing for this is the whole notion of a thick skin. And one of the discussions we had that we wanted to continue here was, is that really what we want, or do we want like less people behaving in ways where we need thick skin to be successful? And I'm wondering, just from our panelists, any of you want to start us off on sort of this resilience discussion? Anybody willing to jump in first on this? I can put you on the spot, but yeah, Anna, over to you, because I know that we had some pre-discussion. Can you kick us off just with sort of talking about this from your perspective?
Sure, I'll jump in. And it was so interesting just preparing for this time today in this webinar, just thinking through a lot of these questions, and whether or not you need a thick skin, because I think you do a little bit. And I say that as somebody who, and I think many women are this way, certainly among the network that I'm part of, and my friend network and so on, is like, I like to be liked, right? And I want people to like me. And as I've moved through my career, and particularly into this leadership role now, I've had to develop a bit of a thicker skin, in terms of the ability to make hard decisions, but knowing that those aren't always going to be liked. But I do think that you can still be a compassionate leader. And I was just in a session a couple of weeks ago talking about what that means, and it can mean many different things, but I think you can be firm and decisive, and you can have a thick skin, but you can still be like a caring and compassionate leader and show vulnerability in the workplace. So I know that kind of touches on a few things, but I've started us off.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over to you. Oh, everybody's on the board. Okay, Michelle, over to you.
Yeah, something to say. Yeah, resilience, thick skin. I don't know that I'd call it a thick skin. I think instead of being we need thick skin, I think we need thick boundaries. I think boundaries around what we are willing to accept. And the only way you understand what you're willing to accept, what you stand for, what you don't, that comes from knowing yourself and being very, very clear and being very, very explicit about how you use yourself in your role to advance things. And I always share that every single one of us as women have this really unique combination of characteristics. You've got gifts, you've got talents, and then you have values that are sitting inside you about how you run your life. And then you have that in action as virtues and how you're going to execute your life. And I think that when you know so clearly, I always say to my people, like, you got to know your values like your middle name. Like, I'm Michelle, Freedom, Excellence, Independence, Charles Gustafson. It's super, super, super long. But when you know how you are railroad tracking your life, it makes it a lot easier to create the boundaries of what you will and won't accept, which makes assertiveness a lot easier, which makes being able to say, no, I don't think so. Or, you know what, I'm making this decision for X, Y, and Z reason because it is settled in yourself. When we feel unsettled in the reason and the purpose we're making the decision from a place of integrity in your own values, that's where you feel shaky. And that's where you're like, I should muster the resilience. You shouldn't have to muster it. It should just be there.
Great, thank you. And there's a comment actually from Bobby that really built right on that, how we're doing sort of leadership develop, how are we developing this versus, tough it out, suck it up kind of thing, that notion about creating that. Over to you, Denise.
Thanks very much. I absolutely agree with everything that Anna and Michelle said. I think what really resonates with me is don't lose sight of your values. So, thick skin is great and sometimes helps with criticism, but sometimes it also helps you take in what people are saying and take that and make the changes that you need to take. So I don't think you always need to deflect everything that's coming your way. I also think that empathy, open-mindedness, and the courage to speak up is equally important. So you need to be able to be, as you said, Michelle, assertive. And it is tough, especially in senior positions. We are at the top of the chain, and it is sometimes lonely, and it is sometimes very difficult to hear what people have to say. But I think it's all about being assertive and making sure that people can hear you with keeping in mind what they're telling you. Like, don't lose sight of what's important to them. Some days are tough, there's no question. And I think thick skin is really important. But I think at the end of the day, yeah, just to be confident, strong, and the courage to speak up is exactly what we need to do.
Thank you, Denise. Appreciate that. And that notion of values-based leadership is something I'm going to circle back to after we've talked to Jody, because there was a question in the chat about how do we model and create that? Jody, to you, please.
Again, I mean, I agree with all. And I think when I talk about resilience and that women shouldn't be a prerequisite for an entry-level requirement, I think there's a survival resilience versus a strategic resilience.
Yeah.
And, survival, just slugging through and, trying to get it done versus, building systems, creating better organizations. So I think that's the resilience that I talk about, that I want to build. And I think when we talk about tougher skin sometimes, if we focus on what we have to be versus the actual system that is creating us to have that tougher skin, I think that there's a role that we need to play around creating better systems. And from a council, from a women in local government perspective, we see weak systems when we don't have good role clarity from councils, as an example. They don't have proper HR training, governance is weak, or the accountability is not there with respect to codes of conduct. So, I think it's helping support that structure and that system as well, so that let's still be resilient and tough, but make sure that we're in an environment where we're doing it to support our own values and not bend to somebody else's.
Thank you. I remember, every individual on this call will come with their own unique disposition too. I'm somebody who kind of is tough. And I remember being told by a woman I worked with, and she said, when you're in that room and bantering and accepting, I was working in a public safety context. She goes, doesn't it bother you, that sort of dynamic? This is 20 years ago, so you can all visualize, how some things are very different. And she goes, doesn't that bother you? I'm like, no, I've worked in a male environment. And she looked at me, cocked her head, and she said, but you're setting the standard for the rest of us. And it was a really important reminder that sometimes as we evolve through an organization, we've sort of fought those battles and we're tough, air quote, but not realizing that what we accept, we set the standard for the rest of the organization. And so it was just a good reminder, because I think that soft is being misconstrued in 2026 as weak, as is kindness. And I think rebranding that is one of the elements of values-based leadership. Is we don't have to be turtles with hard outer shells, but those soft bellies that nobody gets to see. But I guess in terms of values-based leadership, have any of you experienced work being done around that versus leading with your values, sort of in all the lowercase? But in terms of this resilience, have any of you had any experience with supporting the growth of those skills in your organizations? Everybody's being polite. Raise your hands, folks, if you have.
I just chimed.
Okay, there you go.
I know that in our city, because I'm new on council, so this is my first term, and I really appreciated starting from a strategic plan realm as a counselor. I think that's really important for cities to do. And I found it quite like a homecoming, because it's how I start with my people too. Because it's if you cannot consolidate what we are trying to achieve in railroad tracks, then it's really difficult to write policy, to write bylaw, to make a statement to the media, to present what the city's stance is without having railroad tracks. We need railroad tracks of those values. And so I think cities, municipalities, and communities that embrace starting getting their councils thinking about that and getting their communities thinking about that, even if they've never done it before. I know there were certain counselors in our realm, they're, oh, I've never done this before. I said, it's fun. It's like putting puzzle pieces together. And I think disarming the process, because I think sometimes people think, values-led leadership, and it's this very like cerebral ideas of like leaders. We're just trying to get on the same page about the outcome that we're trying to create as a community. And
Yeah.
if that can be articulated and then the people brought into the process, then there's ownership over that. And that's how you get what Jody's talking about, is then you get to put those systematic pieces in place once there's ownership. You
Thank
have to
you.
own it first.
Excellent. Anybody else? Any hands up? No. Yeah. Okay, Jody, over to you.
Yeah, just I guess I can add, and maybe it's slightly different perspective, but with respect to, I guess, my own leadership, my own organizations that I've worked in, to create pathways, to make sure that there's pathways for women within those organizations to grow and succeed. I think it's a role that we play in our positions. And my last role, 6 of the 7 leadership positions were all women. It was that's a complete flip to what it was. And I'm not saying that was all me, but we have to encourage women. We have to make sure that the paths are there for them with the training and the mentorship along the way. No different than how Denise got in her role. I'm sure that was, and like you can speak to it later again, but I think that's part of it, is making sure that you're creating teams and an environment where women can grow and develop.
Great. Thank you. Denise.
Thanks very much. So interesting how you had mentioned, Jody, about the number of females in your senior leadership team. So we have a team of 9, and out of that, we actually have 7 that are female and 2 that are male. We also have a female mayor, which is the second one that we've had. The last term was also a female mayor. So I didn't even notice it. And someone had come up to me and said, do you realize that most of your senior leaders are women? That's not even something I was focused on. But again, the opportunities for the women in the workplace and the support that we have here absolutely gave that opportunity for women to advance. So I think it's great to hear that there's so many women in leadership roles. And I certainly have seen that in the town of Huntsville. So it's quite interesting to see that.
Great. Over to you, Anna.
Thanks. I was just going to do a plug for Port Moody Council, who I think has the most women on it of any council in BC, at least. 6 of our 7, including our mayor, are women. It's not so much on your question, Tracy. I just wanted to note, because there's so much good that's coming through the chat. And there was a really good comment a little earlier that, that having tough skin is not, I think it said something like it's not okay. It talked about bad behavior. And I just want to say, I thought that was a really good comment. We should not be tolerating bad behavior, right? You shouldn't have to like toughen up and take things, right? Or listen to things or hear things. And it's terrible behavior. It's not only uncivil, but it's disrespectful. So I don't really have a thought on that. I just wanted to acknowledge, I thought that was a really good comment in the chat.
Well, and I think that that's important. Also, just as somebody who does conflict work with councils, lowercase c, we also need to deal with chafing, like the low grade things that aren't damaged yet, but are going to create blisters. And just that notion about what we accept, we get more of. Somebody put into the chat. I just think that whole notion, but also I do think the corollary is also true. Our reaction is also, not to egregious behavior is a choice as well. So reminding people that, when things happen, trying to create, inside our organizations, that agency to, is everything an 11, or can some things be 3s out of 10? That all of these things can be true, but I do think that watching patterns, because it's easier to deal with things the first time or few times it happens than after it's been occurring for 2 years. I'm looking through the chat here, and I know, Robin, you're watching we're getting some virtual clapping here in our chat for those of you not watching it. But Robin, just curious, just checking in on our YouTube folks. Are you keeping an eye over there? Anything that we haven't touched on, particularly around resilience and
I sure am. There has been no conversation happening yet. I will let you know.
Good. I won't put you on the spot any further. I'll let you jump in if it occurs, but I just know that we've got a bit of a complex technical environment here. So thank you, Robin. Um, the next, so sort of when we talk about this, and if any of you have resources, one of the things that we're also talking about is Toastmasters, just some of the skills that are maybe not assertiveness skills per se, but a number of people in the chat are giving suggestions around ways to develop that comfort with internal advocacy, and sort of that notion about standing up. So please keep dropping those in. Um, we've got some organizations that actually have their own Toastmasters that help people earlier in their careers, languaging and being able to speak up with confidence and the skills around it. Um, the next sort of topic that I wanted to move to, I guess let me toss it to you. We're talking about set boundaries and don't tolerate things. Any tips? Because that's an easy statement to make in the abstract, but you know, we've got, codes of conduct, and I'm somebody who navigates in that world. They kind of deal with it like the outfield fence in baseball. Most of the friction, whether it's councils or in staff groups, is on the infield, sort of the low grade frictions. But any tips on how to set, we talk about setting boundaries. Any tips on how to do that? This is a surprise question that yeah. Over to you, Jody.
Um, I guess it's by, yes, focusing on the accountability side of things and like you said, code of conduct, but it's also, I guess, capturing your allies in the moment as well. Finding the people that also need to be protected or the people that also can support you. So I think it's really important that if you're in that situation, that you gather the people, number one, that support you in your
Yeah.
in your yeah, I think of code of conduct, like if you do have to face personal harassment, it does help to have people who are supporting you to get through that. But it's also recognizing that there are other people that this affects too. And I think that gives a person strength when you have to use the tools around you to help protect, whether it be your staff, other women. And I think that helps when you're being driven by that protection, and it's about the integrity of the organization, not the person. So
Well, thank you for saying that, Jody, because just as you were saying that, a comment came into the chat. If resilience is about always being asked of employees, but never designed by leadership, we're not building strong cultures, we're just building endurance. So bang on point with what you were saying there. And for those of you that are curious, there is some good, and Michelle, I expect you've got tools on this as well around articulating values, like checklists of value, just to sort of lead those discussions. Denise, you have your hand up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on determining what people's values are and what their limitations are. So I think that stems right from the top. So if your team is watching how you set your boundaries and how you allow those to penetrate through, that speaks volumes. So if you have someone in a senior position that allows that type of activity that it should not be permitted, whether it's a man or a woman, is you show them how to make sure that they can be strong in responding to those interactions. So I think setting boundaries is one thing, but watching how your team watches how you deal with those boundaries is another, because if they see that at the top senior level,
Yeah.
that behavior is being condoned or being allowed to happen, then that filters down through the organization. And that certainly doesn't result in a healthy work culture. So I think, setting boundaries is obviously being very strong, knowing what your values are, and maybe even knowing what the organization should know what your values are so that they know what's important to you and what will trigger you. So I think it really stems a lot from the top, making sure that your team knows that you can set these boundaries and this is how you handle it. And it's worked very well here. So I would assume it would work in other organizations as well.
Well, and Denise, what I like about that is how you link not just what you say, but people are watching what you do. Like you can have the best set of values on a wall, but that lived experience of watching how how those, that are leading the organization, are they walking that walk or not? Because there is a bright light on your conduct. Michelle, to you, and then Jody.
Thanks. Yes, there's a lot of intersection here. I was just watching the chat as we were talking about this, and there was a comment that said, lead with your city's values. They ground and strengthen the decision, ground your decisions and strengthen the courage. I absolutely think that's true. I think it's valuable to think about your city values as one circle of the Venn diagram, and then your own personal values as the other. And what's going to happen is you're going to get this. If you have this, that's tough. That's tough. But you likely don't have this because you wouldn't be doing the thing you're doing in the position you're doing it if it didn't have some sort of crossover. So what I really encourage people to do, it's called a confidence compass. And it's a wheel of the things that are important to you. It is your values, it is your virtues, but it's also your gifts and your talents. And if you know those so clearly, you will be able to see where you overlap in your city. And if that's the case, if something's going on, if you're feeling mistreated, if you're feeling like um, you're not sure you can use your voice, it is really imperative that you sit with yourself and go, what is this experience in contravention to my personal value?
Yeah.
You have to be able to articulate that. So if, for example, you have a value of growth and independence, for example, and you're feeling pressed down somehow and it doesn't have to be just your organization, it could be your life, right? Your organization, your life, if you're feeling some sort of static, I say to my people, if it feels itchy on you, there's something going on that is not aligning with that value. You have to sit with yourself, give yourself a minute, 5 minutes, close the door with a coffee, quiet and put that good music on, and understand which value is getting rubbed up against.
Yeah.
Then you're able to then articulate that to someone else, whether that's your upper management, that's your mayor, that's your, even your allies inside the organization. Because I think it's not that we don't necessarily know what's wrong or that you don't want to stand up for yourself. It's hard to articulate why it is jarring to you. So being able to put a lens of this is what is important to me in my values, and I'm not seeing that crossover right now, which is why I'm having a problem with it, will tell the other then what can be done.
Thank
So
you.
gotta be clear.
And what I appreciate about that statement, Michelle, is first of all, this sort of notion about values as a driver, but also as a boundary. They can be either what makes us want to do things, but also be that sort of note, this is that's a bridge too far. And I think the one thing that is important as well is to realize that, your aspirational values may be met at work, but there may be other ways to meet them, especially if you can create a little bit more of that elusive work-life balance. It might not be that at this specific moment, all of those things are being met. It's a different question, as you point out, though, Michelle, if they're being breached. And I think we sometimes bundle both of those things together. So thank you for that. One of the things that, first of all, we're getting great contact, some books. I had suggested one of my favorite books for alignment is Start With Why. And I've had the, spoiler alert, I've had the pleasure of working with both Anna and Michelle's counsels on some of this work, even around governance and that sort of thing. But that notion that we're talking about knowing yourself allows you, if you've ever ridden a bicycle or a motorbike, ironically, the faster you go, the more stable you are. And the more you're looking further away, the less likely you are to be pulled off track by a rock on the road. In my head, that analogy made more sense than as it came out. But just that notion of looking a little further and moving a little quicker. Anyways, I'm just looking here. The next area I do want to shift gear into a bit is mentorship, because that's always something that we hear about. We certainly heard about it in the survey that was done in advance, is how much people wanted that or how much that was a foundational piece of their success. But I guess there's sort of two elements of that I'd like to toss to you as a panel. What's been your experience? And cool if you've got it, but how do you get it if you don't? Like, just that notion about what do we do if that, and by the way, mentors aren't like fairy godmothers that come, and sort of, but just, first of all, I guess I'll split those questions up. How have any of you had experience with mentorship in your career? that's been impactful. Anna, to you first.
Oh, good. All the hands are up, which is
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, we're going.
Yes, I've had mentors, and I was thinking about this obviously in prep for our conversation today. I've had like a more formal mentor that I had, I would say mid-career, which was a longer term kind of relationship and was very helpful. But I also think that mentors can come in different forms. Like I don't always think it has to be formal or long term. When I think about the steps I've made in my career and the support that I've gotten, at different times, at different intervals, and in different ways, I think of them more as supporters, maybe more than mentors. This might come
Yeah.
from your colleague or a senior colleague, or it might be the mayor, like Denise was talking about, or it might be your network of family or your network of female friends, right? So I have had formal mentorship and really benefited from that. But I've also, at really critical points in my career progression, had people who've encouraged me and given me, I guess they're mentors, right? I think of them as mentors or supporters. They've given me time, they've given me encouragement, they've shared their knowledge. And in particular, moving into this role, like I can safely say that I would not be in this role as a city manager if I didn't have a mentor who was already in our organization say to me, well, why not you? Right? When the position was vacant. Because as Michelle, I think you were talking about the bingo card, being a city manager, a CAO was not on my bingo card at that time. I was new in a leadership role as a general manager. And then there was an opportunity. And I had somebody who saw, I guess, a leadership potential in me that maybe I hadn't seen yet. Myself and my network of family and friends around me were all saying, well, why not you? And so to me, that was, I guess I'm just saying I wouldn't be here if I didn't have that kind of mentorship and that support. And I don't think that's uncommon. Like I was at a conference within the last couple of weeks talking with other female CAOs, and there others have had those experiences as well. And I know Denise might speak to her own, but really just somebody asking you, well, why not you? And then it just gets you thinking about, well, yeah, I could do this job and I could do it well. Yeah.
And what I like about that, Anna, is undoing the proper noun of mentor and moving it into the touch points of mentoring. Because it's not like it's not like it's a job description. It's often touch points through through our careers where people have done that for us. Denise, to you, please.
Thanks very much. Yeah. So first I have to apologize. I'm fighting a cold, so I have a bit of a raspy voice, but I couldn't agree more with Anna. So mentorship doesn't always have to be looking up at someone to mentor you. So I have had the previous CAO that was in the town of Huntsville was a huge mentor to where I am today. And I've also had people in the organization that are mentoring you, showing you what not to do. So it's not always about here's all the great things you should do. Here's some things you shouldn't do, within the organization. So I currently sit as the first vice chair on the Ontario Municipal Administrators Association. And we have an amazing mentorship program. And I've had the pleasure of mentoring, I think it's about 7 individuals. And I can't tell you how much I've taken from those sessions. So it's not just about listening to those who you look up to and aspire to be. It's having those mentorship interactions with people that just bring value all across the board. So I can honestly say I would not be in my position today if it hadn't been for amazing mentors within the organization, not only here, external, and even members of our family that, show us how to be strong and how to make decisions. And I just think learning from other people is what gets us to where we are today. It's an amazing thing.
Thank you. Appreciation for the advice you're all giving in the chat as well. Over to you, Jody.
So I won't repeat because I totally agree with Anna and Denise, but then I'll just give a shout out to CAMA and that organization led by a tremendous woman leader. in Jennifer Goodine. I mean, she does whatever she can to promote women, and I'm here today because of her. But also a shout out to my own, and she might not know she's a formal mentor, but Lisa with the Town of Paradise CAO has been a tremendous support to me from my first day with CAMA. So that's a little personal shout outs. I had many along the way. But one thing when I was doing some research for preparing for this, I did realize that, came across the difference between sponsorship and mentorship. And where mentorship is supporting women, it's more face to face. Where sponsorship is advocating for women or anyone when they're not in the room. It's helping them in career advancement. And the one thing, and I've seen it throughout my career, men do a much better job at sponsorship versus mentorship to help launch their careers than women do. And I think that there's a role that we can play in helping move sponsorship of women too, and actually help, create career paths for women and make a more intentional effort for that.
Have you seen any of that in your workplaces? Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, you had your hand up, but maybe not about that. But just, I'm going to go to Michelle and then just sort of ask, like, how do we do that? How do we create those sorts of ladders and elevation? But to you, Michelle, because you had your hand up before I asked that question.
Yeah, mentorship is my jam. I had my first mentor when I was 18 years old, and she mentored me in my first business. She was actually my grade 7 English teacher. And Fern Jensen, shout out. She's not here, but if I say her name, she heard me. And mentors are the ones who are, I said, like, they're the wind in your sails. And I totally agree that some are informal and some are formal. Fern didn't know she was a mentor to me when she was doing it. She was giving of her heart, giving of herself to pour into me. And I love that. I love that visual of, pouring that pitcher into the glass. That's what they do, right? But as I come through my career and I mentor women myself, there's some parts to this relationship that becomes really, really special. The first is reciprocity. That means that both of you in the mentorship relationship get something out of it, just like Denise said, right? Like there's this cross hatching of building of each other. Fern wanted to pour into me and I received it. But she tells me, she goes, but your advancement and your friendship through me mentoring you built me too. Like it made me feel like I was value and contributing to something that was growing. And so I think when you're looking at where do I find one? How do I get one? There's a few things you need to do. First of all, you have to prepare yourself for the mentorship. That's an internal thing. What is the outcome I want to achieve? What am I trying to strengthen? It's really important to understand what you're trying to strengthen. Is it skills? Is it a knowledge gap? Just to understand who you're looking for. And then once you've prepared yourself, your mind, your heart, your outcome, then you get to seek it. And when you're seeking it, you're looking for someone who embodies the thing that you want to develop and strengthen. And I hear it from all of the women. It's the people whose shoulder tapped and said, well, why not you? Well, that's because they see something in you that they already know in themselves and you can't see it yet. And that's how you get the wind in the sails, right?
Love
and so
that.
it is a magical relationship when mentorship looks like the infinity symbol. It gives, you get, it gives, you get, and the outcome is conversation over conversation over conversation over tools, over frameworks, over did you do it? Oh my gosh, you did. Yes, you did. And then it's the celebration from watching the rungs of the ladder just tick, 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 tick up, and both of you are better for it. And the more we can do that as women for each other from really genuine, heartfelt, soul-filled up spaces, the better any of this gets. The systems then get better because we're building it from that place too.
Love that. Anna, to you.
I was just gonna, yeah, this is so great. I loved everything Michelle just said. And I'm looking at the chat as it comes in because I just wanted to say, like, in terms of that person who did tap me on the shoulder. What I've really tried to do, particularly since I went into this role, is to do that for others. And I know that's our whole theme, right? The give to gain, but really trying to take the time when somebody wants to have a conversation or wants to chat about an opportunity or needs my support. So not even like being a formal mentor, but really just trying to that ratcheting up of each other, that kind of networking and supporting each other with whatever people need, if it's information or encouragement, right? So I guess for me, I think it took that opportunity, that person doing that for me to really come into doing that for others. It's not that I wasn't doing it before, but I'm doing it in a lot more concerted way. And Tracy, to your point about how do we encourage that within our organizations, I'm trying to do that and have conversations with people about their opportunities and their leadership potential, because I didn't have a lot of people have those conversations with me earlier in my career. So I'm trying to do that not just with women, but with people within the organization and people that I know, right? And say, well, let's talk about that opportunity and why not you?
Well, and I think, I've had the pleasure of seeing Anna in action and also centering portfolios as a leader that are not traditionally male or traditionally, female dog. Like, a lot of our portfolios, what gets airtime also gets seen, recognized, and rewarded. And I think, one of the things that somebody described to me is that having a great mentor is having a mirror that you look into, that flattering mirror in your house, that one that, but it also tells you the truth, not in an unkind way, but to be able to see yourself through the eyes of somebody who truly appreciates you. And it's one of the reasons why, when we're talking about this, I don't love the theme of give to gain. I think it's give and gain. And that infinity symbol that you mentioned, Michelle, has got, people in the chat, that it's not sort of this top down, if I'm going to give this so I get something out of it. And I don't think that's the intention, by the way, of the theme of International Women's Day, but just that notion that, anyways, that reciprocity. There's also in the chat some actual tangible resources being dropped in, like the city of Kelowna has a formal mentorship program, and there's a link to that for those of you that might want to look at some things in your organization, that so please keep dropping those in if you've got something in your organization, that big or small, that has worked. Because I think that's one of the things out of these webinars is people love to hear sort of ideas, but they also, if they can walk away with 2 or 3 things that they can do differently, even inside your own chair without changing the entire structure of your organization. Some of these tips we're getting are really useful that way. Um, and one of the questions that came in just in the chat is, what about when confidence has been damaged? Have any of you got any suggestions? This sort of links in with mentorship, but also with that resilience. If you've been in a negative environment, any ways to break that pattern that the group might suggest, as and I don't know that this is necessarily gendered, but we're sort of talking about building on positive, but I know just from knowing some of you that you've had different experiences where you've had to sort of rebuild after challenging situations. Who have you leaned into, or how, if you've experienced that, or how have you handled that sort of bounce back ability? Denise, over to you.
So this one for me is a bit of a sensitive discussion, but I did have a time where it was very difficult in the workplace, and it was probably the lowest I had ever been. And being the most senior position in the organization, I felt very vulnerable, because for my entire career, specifically in the role as CAO, I have always tried to be that strong person that the organization could follow. And as long as I was solid, then everybody else felt solid. But there was a time when it was pretty tough. And how I got through that was my team supported me. And I think it was just a result of, like I tried to be so committed to them for all of those years. And then when I was at my weakest point and needed it, they came in and held me up. So I think how I got through that was just having that support from the team, and them understanding that, it's okay, regardless whether you're a man or a woman. Sometimes things are tough, and it takes a whole community to make things successful and supportive. So that was a tough time, and it was just the support of others that got me through it, for sure.
I'm sorry you went through that, Denise. And what it reminds you is the trust that you had built up before you needed it, so that you could lean into that group and feel safe. Because I think that's one of the challenges, is when we most need other people to support us, is not the time, that if the network isn't, if the net that's catching you isn't tightly woven, it can make people feel particularly vulnerable. So
That's
Michelle,
a perfect way to describe it, is the net it needs to be tight to support you. And that's through solid leadership.
thank you. Michelle.
Thank you, Denise, for sharing that. You brought up a good point about the support. I love an analogy. My council loves it when I bring an analogy for something. So the net is perfect, because what I was going to say is that we all have people in our lives that can help be that net. And I always remind women that the relationships in our lives are not all created equal, and not everyone in our lives can give us what we need at the moment. But to really take a good audit around you of who is in your life, and know who are the strongest that can be the net for you. I have this thing called I'll share this tip. So if y'all have a piece of paper, please get your piece of paper out. So, I have this framework that I call the 5 C's of supportive relationships. And each of the C's is an action action word that this person plays in your life. The first is to cheer. A cheerleader is someone who is there waving the banner behind you. Yes, you can do this. Yes, you can do. Denise, keep going. Love you. And they're cheerleading both privately, but also publicly. Like, get Denise, she's the one. Ask her, right? They're just there. The champion is the second one. And a champion is there who's going to be that sponsor. The sponsor is a person in the doors, closed behind doors, the quiet rooms where you are not present, but they are there for you. They know not only your best strengths, your gifts and talents, but they know your reason for being. I call it your meaningful outcome. They know why you're doing the work that you're doing, that is not top line of your resume, but that is right here. They know your outcome. And they're in the back rooms telling people. That's the champion. Then you have the person who's the challenger. Oh, this will be the mentor style person. They are cheering you, yes. They are championing out front in the parade, but they also are going to ask you the hard questions. They're going to say, Denise, though, are you seeing it for real? Or are you telling yourself a story around that? And you're forced to see yourself with the truth, right? That's the challenger. Then you have the person who checks in. You know the person. I haven't heard from you in a while. Where have you been? Sometimes a mentor is this at the same time, right? So they haven't heard from you in a while. How's it going? How did you end up handling that such and such XYZ, right? And then the one that makes all the difference is the top line one, which is to cherish. Cherish. This is the person who knows that you are not your role. They know you're not CAO. They know you are Anna, Jody, and Denise. They know what is important to you, and they would feel sad if you left the planet, because they know how good you are. I want women in this webinar to know that you are not the job. You are not the job. The job is a role you have. Okay? And so you need people who are going to 5C you for you, your name, not your role. And what happens if they 5C you for you, it will support you in the role. So after this call, I want all of y'all to get your little piece of paper, draw the thing. Okay. Do the audit and put the names of the people. And I will warn you that you won't have many who have all 5.
Yep.
You might have some people who have 2. You might have some people who have 3. You might have some people who have 1. You might have some in your life who have 0.
Yep.
Audit the time and the space. But I hope that helps,
Yep.
because we all need that safety net.
Well, and I think, build your bench. And, somebody commented that they're going to use those with their 7-year-old for friendships. I tried to
I
paraphrase
do it all the
it.
time, all the
Yeah.
time.
But I think that note about not putting all of our eggs in one basket, because the people that we rely on are also living independent lives with pressures and their own things going on. Um, just getting some really good, yeah. What do you call the people that are just, giving you a hard time?
They're not even on the map.
There's another, it might be F words instead of C words. Sorry, that's inappropriate. I'm going to move on a little bit because we're talking about mentorship. But what about sort of community connections, sort of not so much the one-on-one, but the rooms that you go. I mean, we've talked about CAMA, Wilga, some of these organizations, but where else do you get your tanks filled, in terms of confidence? We, the survey certainly said that we don't lack confidence, but I do think that, Michelle, in your C's were those people that go, you got this, not to tell you a different way to do it, but just to reinforce, yeah, you go. Um, but I guess, when we talk about these sort of community connections, are your networks different than the mentorship? And I think it's a bit of a segue between what Michelle talked about, because, and I guess the other blunt question is, have all of your mentors been women? Because I think, we're on this sort of, session for women in leadership, but, what's been your experience sort of about the networks you've created? Go ahead, please, Jody.
So I guess jumping off that, you're right. They haven't always been women. And I just read a comment about how somebody said their daughter is their mentor, and I think that that's really good, because for women to leave here knowing that they don't need 20 years experience to be a mentor. My daughter just graduated from university and did a leadership development program, and I'm learning things from her every day. She's a sounding board, and I really do believe that, if anything, that everyone leaves today realizing that they can give to gain in their own, influential spheres. Like, it doesn't matter what age or how much experience. So I really like that, Tracy.
Thank you. Denise, over to you.
Thanks very much. So I think networks are extremely important. So, strong networks, they increase your visibility, they broaden your knowledge, they open doors for collaboration for other potential advancements in your career. I do think, I have a great network of people. I'm a lower tier municipality within a region, and there's 6 lower tier municipalities, and I'm the only female CAO out of the 6 municipalities. And I work with an amazing group of male CEOs in the organization, and they're a huge network for me, right? So I can reach out to them, and it doesn't always have to be, a mentor, but I think the networking is so important. It absolutely helps you move further in your career. It helps strengthen who you are. So I think those connections are extremely important to make, whether they're male or female. I think your network absolutely opens opportunities for you. Super important.
Excellent. Thank you. Anna.
And just to add to that, I for sure, networks like CAMA or in BC, we have LGMA. I have networks of CAOs within the region. And really over the career, I've been lucky to be involved in different networks like planning and around climate action. But I have noticed, and I was chatting with some CAOs a couple of weeks ago as well, like, there's still value. It's great to have that network of people who might be in the same role or in the same profession, but it is nice to have a bit of a subsector of that that's for women in those roles, right? Like, just to carve out a little bit of time, if you're at a conference, maybe there's a session or maybe there's a dinner, because whenever that happens, I feel like everyone around the table is getting a lot of value and saying, we wish we could have more of this.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that, when we look at some of these, by the way, are you all open for LinkedIn connections from folks in the sector and that sort of thing? Because bluntly, a network you don't connect with is the same as not having one. So really, as you navigate, those of you, on this webinar, if you find an article that you think others might find interesting, put it out into the universe. There's that notion of, and opening your circle. One of the things, the more senior we've been, if you've been to a conference, for example, you probably know two or three, but just that real antennas up about opening, and I use that because my kids used to play sports and we used to use the open the circle. If you're there putting your shoes on, creating space for the newer athlete or the kid who's maybe not the best player on the team, that the responsibility to open the circle. Just watching for people that might be standing alone and sharing um, the confidence that you might have achieved through even positional support. But even also looking at our systems, how do our systems of networking exclude people? When I was a lawyer, we used to have hockey tickets. Well, honestly, I was perfectly comfortable going to a hockey game with a male client, but he does not want to be caught on the kiss cam with me at a hockey game. And so what the firm did is they bought 4 tickets. So it changed the ability of a female lawyer to invite male clients to the game without it. Like it was a weird thing, but they didn't make me go to the ballet. They still let me bring clients to the hockey game by removing the barriers that only I experienced. Anyways, it was, just I think looking at your systems, where do people network? Like, who is going to your golf tournament every year? And is that where power is being wielded in your organizations, formally or informally? The more you have impact on that in your organization, take a look at those things. Not that they're set up to exclude people, and not just gendered, but abilities. Where does power get wielded in your community? And for those of you that have impact on it, are you using your powers for good in those ways? Even if, like me, you might like those things, what's the experience of people not in your chair? Anyways, Wilga has a LinkedIn page. We're getting lots of different suggestions here. Joining the different, if you're not active in your association in your province, I strongly encourage you to be. It's not just that it helps you and advances your career, but man, I'm a consultant. You save a lot on consulting by finding out at those conferences what your colleagues are doing. The one thing we have in our sector is the ability to openly share. If Anna was at IBM and Michelle was at Apple, they're not going to share what they're doing to get new computer chips. But the best thing about our sector is we are absolutely open. But if you don't have those networks, and help your people more junior in your organization develop those networks. Like CAMA, for example, has created their EA association so that executive assistants, those critical fulcrums of power in our organizations, have their own place to share knowledge and connection. But sort of look at how you're helping people build those. I just want to, we're coming towards the end of this, and oh, Anna, please, because the next thing I'm going to ask as we go further is what are sort of your top tips and resources? I'm going to like toss this out, but Anna, back to you, please.
It's just a quick point just on that, thinking of people in your organization, your staff, your team, and those peer networks. I think encouraging people to take part in those peer networks, because I've experienced places and times where there's a hesitation to support somebody being part of a peer network. It might take away from, your work time, but they're so valuable in many different ways. So it was just to think about that in terms of the benefits that it can offer to a range of your team members.
Yeah. Yeah. If it matters to, candidly follow the money, are you willing to put a little bit of an investment into these sorts of things formally and informally? We're getting lots of really good resources, from HR, LinkedIn, suggestions. We'll aggregate these out as well. Anybody want to sort of, we're down to our last few minutes here, and I'm just curious, what any sort of takeaways or resources or tips that you might share, whether it's around networks, mentoring, anything we've talked about, but just what do you wish you knew or, earlier on? Anybody willing to sort of take over? And it's a very open-ended question, but just candidly, you have achieved roles that many people on this, might be in the chairs or might be looking to. Any tips? Anna, thank you. Save me from awkward question asking.
No, it's a great question. Like, what do I wish, had happened for me? And what do I try to do for others? I really wish somebody had sat me down, whether it was a mentor or one of, Michelle's 5 C's, and just talked about kind of leadership goals. Like, what is your leadership ability? What could your path look like? Because often I had great bosses over my career, people who gave me feedback on the role, but like not a lot of leadership conversations, right? Or about what your path could look like. So I guess I wish I'd had that, and I'm trying to do that for others now in the position that I'm in.
Perfect. Thank you. Denise.
Thanks very much. I absolutely agree with Anna. I wish that I had have believed in myself a little bit sooner. And it wasn't that I didn't have people encouraging me. I think just took a little bit longer. And maybe it was because, I've been with the municipality for 34 years, and honestly, typically it was very male dominated in senior positions. So I didn't ever see myself in that role. And I think the important thing for people to remember is make sure that you're visible, make sure that people see that you're there. Keep showing up. And one of the books that I read that I absolutely love and I reference a lot of the time is called Lean In. It's written by Sheryl Sandberg. And it is fantastic. And it talks about making sure that people hear your voice, making sure that you're visible. I've also had great success in participating in different organizations such as AMCTO and OMA, which we actually had a session. It was just for women. It was a few years ago, and it was a great session. But do things like ask to go to your senior administrator and see if you could become an associate member of the organization. And the networks and connections that you make there will be priceless. Like it's such a great thing. But I think my closing comments certainly are just make sure that you're visible, people see you, and always keep showing up.
Thank you. Jody.
Hey, I agree with all on this. And I guess maybe just to add that sometimes we have to step outside our comfort zone, and in order to do that networking, especially like early in a career. And even though we're women here supporting women, we can't lose sight that we are still in a lot of male dominated rooms where women are fewer in the room than men, and we have to be okay to step in those spaces and have the courage to. So, some of that. And the other thing, I guess I'll just leave with is we can't be afraid to ask. For formal mentorships, for informal mentorships, a lot of times I think we're too polite. We don't always ask. We wait for it to happen organically. But do not be afraid to ask women. So that would be my
Excellent.
closing statement.
Thank you. Michelle.
How I think about leadership is it's all a journey. And at every inflection point of your journey in leadership, it is a chance and a question to come back to yourself in some way.
Yeah.
If you think about every inflection point that you've done in your career, something had changed just before it, the antecedent. What happened just before that change? And what I want women to know is that antecedent is really, really important for you to refocus who you are in the role of leadership. And so I think my biggest tip, my people will know that I'm not a huge tip giver because I feel like you can't fix it all with a tip,
Yeah.
but you can fix it all with a tip can be a start.
Yeah.
And I think a start is to understand what your last antecedent was. What was the last change that happened for you so that you can get a new lens about how you approach your leadership. I always will advocate for writing a personal mission statement. Okay, y'all do it all for the cities. We go through all these strategic plan stuff. We make the big boards of the values, and then we have all these lovely sentences that hang up in the front vestibule of the city hall. Okay, but you, as a person, need one too. And your personal mission statement will inform everything else about how you do your life. It won't inform your role as CAO, but it will inform how you're a mother, how you are a friend, how you are a partner. And that's the thing that actually makes fulfillment happen is because you see your role as part of you and your whole life. So, and not only that, a mission statement for you personally will also do the thing that Denise said, which is very important, which is being visible in the places where the people don't expect to see you. That was one thing my dad taught me. We had moved to Canada in 1981. We were the only Black family in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. Anyone in Yorkton? No, Yorkton, Saskatchewan. And if you wanted, and he said, always said, if you wanted to be in a room, you have to be in the places where you are able to walk through the threshold into that room,
Right.
which means that you have to prepare yourself to be visible. And preparing yourself doesn't mean just um, having a long resume or having the right degree or something. It means preparing yourself every single way to be ready to enter the room so that even if someone has something to say about feeling guilty and shouldn't the woman at home and shouldn't you be cooking or whatever they feel like saying, it does nothing to you because your personal mission statement says, I know why I'm here. I know what I deliver. And if in the end I do what I know I'm meant to do, then none of this matters. It's
Excellent.
really your experience in your own leadership and it's your own journey.
Well, first of all, I've got to love your spunk, Michelle, in the chat. This
Huh?
thing, that energy, like people love your energy. And I think this is an important segue as well, because, how many of you just love Michelle's energy? Like that's, I know I do. But also remember, leadership, is not about wearing somebody else's suit, really knowing yourself. And for those of you that are deeply reserved, this place is not reserved for people with high spunk levels. Um, when we talk about being present, it doesn't mean co-op, like it doesn't mean loud or gregarious necessarily. Really finding out how to be present in a way that's congruent with your natural strengths
That's absolutely true.
and to just
And every
say,
single woman here, no matter how you your style of communication, I have a certain style. That's great. But the reason why you feel like you like my spunk is because I know how to use what is uniquely me.
yeah, yeah,
All of you have that
yeah.
ability no matter what. And if even if, because I know how it is, my introverts are sitting there going, whatever, Michelle, I can't be like you because I'm introverted. Okay, listen, when you own how you communicate, introvert or extrovert doesn't matter. You will look just as sparkly, but in your own way, just as captivating, but in your own way,
Yeah.
just as presence filled, but in your own way. You just have to learn how to own it.
Thank you. And I think for those of us that are extroverted, we take up space naturally, but the data shows that people feel more connected to people that are better listeners than talkers. We don't always create that energy and space inside rooms. But I do think that element of knowing what you uniquely bring and feeling comfortable throwing back your shoulders and owning that, you know. Um, Anyways, I know we're wrapping up here. Anybody, we've got some really good, we got some fun fact. I mean, how many of you are a little skeptical about Michelle's claim she's an introvert? Are you a learned extrovert, Michelle?
Yeah, it's ambivert, but I have actually tipped into the intro.
Okay. Um, Anyways, one of the things that I want to, as we close here, is just truly honor the expertise in the virtual room. We're in the big one, with all of the attendees on this. I hope that we stay connected through Wilga, through LinkedIn, please, if we run into each other, connect with each other. Like, be the person that walks up and says, I'm so and so, because I will say socially, women often don't get taught those skills, and networking is seen to be sort of unseemly versus build, like take the capital N of networking out and talk about it as building connections. And sometimes the energy around it changes. The more connections you have, um, the tighter that net is when you need it, but also your levers that you can pull. So I just want to say thank you very much. Any last words before we close? Oh, we're on time. Go us. We're getting some really good
I'm
contacts
loving
here.
the chat. Yeah, just
I
to say
know.
I'm loving the chat. Yeah,
Me
And we-
it's
too.
great.
The girl crush is real, guys.
We will pull out some of the threads and suggestions. And thank you for calling out positively your organizations. Keep dropping it in for the last bit here. I'm just reading this. If your organization's doing something well, please brag shamelessly about it, even if it's not perfect. Even if it's a small thing, the more that we're sharing the good things, first of all, your organization will be proud. Bragging about your organization is where pride comes from, but it also will give other people some line of sight into what can often feel like this, how do I move anything? Just what's the next small step you might take? And I'm curious if any of you have small steps, even in the chat that you might take, or even a takeaway from one of our panelists. Would love to hear something you might try doing more of or less of. And we'll also, generally when we do a debrief, we also sort of dust off our bookshelves and sort of send you with some tips on what we might do as well. So I'm just looking in the chat here. Wonderful. Well, I want to say on behalf of the Wilga committee, how much I appreciate the four of you giving up your time. I want to start, first of all, with thanking the committee, because none of you on this, you have no idea how many hours the women on this committee put into focusing on issues that advance women in local government administration. But then to the four panelists, we were so excited to have you accept the willingness to be on this call. And I got to tell you, we were super smart in choosing you. So I just feel so honored to be able to spend an hour and a half with all of you and virtually with the rest of you. So any final words before we close, ladies?
Thank you so much, Tracy, and you all. I was
Yeah.
honored to be on this panel with you.
That was
That was
great fun.
amazing. Thank
Good
you.
too.
Thank you.
Everybody go out there and kick some ASS.